in the Delphi murder case, we were waiting. And if you know this case, you've been waiting right along with me. Not, a couple years, which is normal for a murder case, more like 7. We have been waiting for upwards of 7 years to find out what really happened and what this man is really facing. And today, we might have wanted to wait longer because it was really hard to hear. The stuff that was released in court today in the way of graphic photographs of the bodies of 2 little girls who were murdered in Delphi, Indiana, was enough to send a courtroom into gasps. Can't imagine what that was like for the jury because they have to look close. They have to look at those pictures. And when you see 2 cute little kids like this, the way those jurors had to look at them, you can never, ever unsee that. Guess who else was in the courtroom? Their families. Their families had to see that today because it is part of the case against Richard Allen. His mom, Richard Allen's own mom, was so affected by those photos in the courtroom today, she cried too. I have a full report, not just about that, but also other stuff that happened. Like, the crime scene is nothing like we thought it was. It is like mountain climbing. And we had someone who actually went out and retraced those steps. You're going to hear all about it. Then, did you hear about the, I know you've heard about the Broadway hit Hamilton, right? That is such a big show. I mean, Broadway shows are big, right, when they're big, but Hamilton is the biggest of all of them. And one of the stars of the show, so proud to have made it to that big pinnacle in his career, has disappeared, like vanished. And when I say vanished, 18 days he's been gone. And his family is really, really worried. Zelig Williams, great social media profile, $1 million smile, fantastic actor. And Hamilton. Tonight, his mother is in virtual agony over this. Take a look.
I just want Zelig to come home. He all I got. He all I got. He all I got.
That trauma is so palpable. And when she says, "You're all I've got, Zelig," it's because she's already lost 2 daughters. She's going to join me on the program tonight with a brand new clue, what Zelig was holding as he walked out the door the last time she saw him before he disappeared. And it is a big clue that's coming as well. And then there was quite a star witness, I suppose you could say, or star attraction in the murder case against Sarah Boone today. The girl who wiped out 9 lawyers finally went to trial because of the allegation she zipped her boyfriend, George Torres, into a suitcase and then just taunted him as he begged for his life. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't even expand his chest to beg strongly enough. But she videotaped it. That's not in contest. She videotaped it and taunted him as he basically died in that suitcase on that floor. And today that suitcase was hauled out in court and it was opened up in front of the jury. You can't tell from this view, but you can really tell from that view. That man was in that tiny case. Looked a lot bigger in the room. It looked in the living room, it looked a lot bigger, but in the courtroom, look at this. Can you imagine watching this live? This is the actual murder weapon. A man fit into that? Because as it turned out, no, he didn't fit. He was so jammed in there and so constricted, he couldn't even expand his lungs to breathe. He could barely expand his lungs to say the word, Sarah. Sarah, please. So that case made it into the courtroom today. I'm going to show you a lot more of this moment when they opened it for the jury, all that coming in just a moment. I want to start here, though. Nobody likes to work on weekends. But if you are sequestered on a jury, which means you can't go home and you can't talk to your family, you can't be on your phone, you can't watch the news, and you are 100 miles from your home, you really don't have much else to do on a weekend, right? So yeah, probably preferable to work every single day of the week and get jury duty over with and get home to your family. And so the Delphi murder trial was in session on Saturday. And the lawyers were filing motions yesterday. And I'm going to catch you up on all that in just a minute, but we really need to talk about today. Because today, the jurors saw what this horrific case is really all about. The murders of two young tweens, Abby Williams and her best friend Libby German, 13 and 14 years old. Their murders were so bizarre and so grotesque that the state kept the details a secret for 7 years, right up until opening statements. But today, those details took the form of 43 crime scene photos, and the jury had to look at all of them. Libby's body was completely nude, covered in blood. Her throat had been slit. She's a child. Blood all over the ground where they found her. Abby's throat also slit. Blood everywhere. Her body also on the ground, but she strangely was wearing Libby's clothing. And it wasn't just the jurors, and the lawyers, and the defendant, Richard Allen, who saw these pictures. It was their families as well in the courtroom. And they audibly gasped, and they cried when the photos came out. And even the mom of the defendant, Richard Allen, cried. She cried. On Saturday, the jurors heard about the search, where and how Libby and Abby were eventually found. And it turns out it was a hell of a lot harder than we thought, and maybe a lot luckier that they got found at all. Their bodies were down a rugged embankment half a mile away from where the girls were last seen alive on the railway bridge. The first sight of either of them was actually Libby's tie-dyed T-shirt, snagged on the branches in the creek. Bodies were covered in what appeared to be carefully arranged sticks. But the ritual killing theory that the defense had really hoped to advance in this case, that was barred by the judge. So they didn't talk about that. The jurors did get Sunday off, but the defense did not. They filed a motion on Sunday against that now infamous video, the one that Libby captured on her phone right before she was murdered. In the video, a man appears to be ordering the girls down the hill.
Downhill. Downhill.
The defense says any expert analysis of that so-called down the hill video would be, quote, completely subjective and speculative. So it sounds a little like the defense doesn't want any experts suggesting what's actually being said on that tape. No ruling yet. Nothing that we have, but we'll keep you posted on it. I do want to bring in our eyes and ears in the courtroom. The cameras and other devices are barred, but my guests have seats. Bob Motta is a criminal defense attorney, and he's the host of the Defense Diaries podcast. And Lindzie Haller is a producer on my new upcoming podcast, Drop Dead Serious. And she was just at the scene of the crime. Welcome to both of you. Thank you so much for doing this, especially after such a hard day. Okay, Bob, I'm going to start with you. You're a defense attorney. That whole suppression effort to get the down the hill analysis, clear that up for me. They're not saying they can't play the down the hill video. They just don't want anybody to get up and stand and give their 2 cents about what they think is happening or what's being said on that video. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, they want to keep it out in general, but as a fallback, they'll take that position. I mean, the reality is that you can't see the actor, meaning the potential perpetrator's mouth moving. Like if you're looking at the video, I've always wondered that. I'm like, how are we just assuming that the sound came from this video? So what I'm suspecting is that they're going to make an argument that the sound can't be proven that it actually came from that video. You know, because in Baldwin,
I think that sounds fair. But trust me, like I just cannot in a million years imagine a court case, a trial where murder victims were able to capture a glimpse of a killer before they're murdered and it is suppressed. I just would have a hard time believing that those jurors aren't going to see that video that we're playing right now.
Oh, it's coming in. There's no chance that Gull's keeping it out. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to come in. They have to make the record.
I just needed you to get me off the ledge on that one, because when I saw suppression, you know, in motion in limine, I just started to shake. Okay, so Lindsay, you are such an intrepid reporter. You left the courtroom after all of those terrible details on Saturday, knowing like how treacherous the place where the bodies were located. I always assumed they were just sort of on a trail, you know, but you went out there and you almost needed like hiking sticks and climbing gloves to get up these embankments. Like it was not what we expected. Can you take me there and describe it?
Well, like you said, I too thought it was a path, and I've been trying to make sense of the timing of all of this. And it was absolutely not a path or trail at this point where they were forced down a hill and ultimately where their bodies ended up. It was not a path. It was extremely treacherous. It was steep. There's branches. There's no barreling through. This wouldn't have been quick. This would have taken a while just to get through it.
So we're actually looking at your video as you were making the journey and following their path. You forged through that river as well, and in our pictures it looks kind of shallow, but I think you mentioned to me you were like waist deep.
Yeah, so it's shallow in some spots. So I mean, eventually I was at a certain point where I had to keep going to get where I needed to go. And so the water did come up to my midsection in some places. If I would have gone in other sections, it would have been much deeper. But it's not just a short creek.
I mean, I can't imagine what these poor kids were going through, being marched through this extraordinarily difficult, as they get more and more remote. Just hell and terrorizing. Bob, the discussion about the bodies with the sticks, I'm not sure what your view was, if you got a clear view of those pictures. I keep envisioning like small patterns of sticks that maybe could be a pattern or might have just fallen, but are they covered? Can you describe for me, are they covered in sticks? And then the bigger question, add to that, the sticks were not tested for DNA. What on earth happened?
Yeah. I had an excellent view. So essentially, there was kind of a thought process going into this trial whether or not we were going to see the crime scene photos and the photos of the girls, which were devastating. It was a really tough day in court today. I got a very good view of it. They're showing them on an 85-inch monitor towards Nick McClelland, the prosecutor's table. And it was pretty clear to me that the sticks were placed purposefully on the girls. We're talking, there were like 3 or 4 that were placed in what looked like an asterisk on Abby. And then Libby had a large limb that looked to be going over her left shoulder that was probably about 7 to 8 feet long. And I'm talking about a thick tree limb. And then she looked to have some other just a few sticks. Like, we're not talking about 20, 30 sticks. These definitely didn't fall off the trees under the girls. They were certainly placed there. I guess the argument's going to be, were they placed in order to just kind of try to make the girls harder to see, or did they have significance? As we all know, Gall's not allowing any kind of significance argument to come in as far as the defense goes. But the way that I saw it, they certainly seem to be purposefully placed. For what reason, I don't know. But as far as the crime scene investigation, when that came out during the testimony with one of the CSI guys, that they decided not to bring any of those sticks with them to have them tested for DNA. It was probably the most kind of exciting little mini battle on a cross-examination, because Baldwin, one of the defense attorneys, asked him, all right, look, well, you didn't think that maybe there could be some evidentiary value to having those sticks tested? And the guy's like, well, no. He's like, well, Baldwin said, well, somebody a human being used their hand to pick those sticks up and place them on the girls, right? And the witness said, yes. He said, well, he could have been wearing gloves. He says, okay, well, was the suspect wearing gloves? And the witness said, I have no idea. Baldwin said, exactly. That's why you get them tested. So they end up going back on March 3rd. Remember, the crime took place on February 13th of 2017. They go back March 3rd and collect the sticks, claiming that they know where the sticks were and that they're the same sticks, which is, like anybody who's followed this case knows that people were in those woods after they cleared that crime scene all the time.
Oh, no kidding. You can't go out into that is insane. I mean, that's going to be ripe terrain for the defense to mine for sure. I want to ask you, Lindsay, about another issue. The murder charge, we get that, but there's no sex assault charges. And I just can't understand, with a naked child with her throat slit and the other child who clearly had been naked, because how could she have gotten into Libby's clothes. Abby was found wearing Libby's clothes. Why is there no talk about sexual assault, or have I just missed something?
You haven't missed anything, Ashleigh. In fact, that was one of the defense questions under cross-examination today was, just to be clear, Richard Allen's DNA was nowhere here, and the answer was no.
I mean, but what about the fact that was there a rape kit? Do we know if there's evidence that was collected? Did they do that?
I believe the people that testified today, those officers, they did not actually conduct the rape kit themselves, but they said that they were aware that one was had. We haven't heard quite yet the results from that, but no, we have not heard anything about any type of sexual assault.
It just makes you wonder, if they're not testing the sticks, did anybody even look for fiber or hair or anything like that? It's just very frustrating. But Bob Motta and Lindzie Haller, I am so glad I had you, because without the cameras in the courtroom, it's very frustrating. There's just not a lot of transparency in the prosecution of this case, and it's important. So I'm going to turn to you again. Thank you both so much for this.
Thank you.
We're always here for you, Ashleigh.
Thank you. Thanks,
I so
Ash.
appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.